Hey YouTube. I know I'm conflicting with Corey right now, but that's all right. People that normally are in here can come later and watch this again. I guess I can talk to myself. Hey, every Sunday is kind of happy. Welcome to the stream. Could I get an audio check from you? I just always have to make sure that my audio is coming in clearly. Hey Bob, thanks. Hey Daryl Deemer. I I was in that stream too, Bob. I have mod duties on Corey's channel, but I figured everyone would. Hey Justin Shepard, welcome to the stream. I figured everyone would just come watch this later. And I don't blame you for a bit if you do that. Corey is a much larger and much more powerful channel, and uh, my intention is not to draw away from Corey. I don't want to steal all of his watchers. Once again, I'm pretty much bereft of ideas as to what to run a live stream about. I've thought about every weekend I start trying to cast around and figure out what new angle or what new tact I'm going to take to talk about for an hour on the internet live. And almost every weekend I come up with two or three ideas. Hey Tom Patterson, welcome to the stream. Um, every weekend I come up with two or three ideas, and then I figure out why it's probably not a good idea to do those ideas, and I'm usually left at the end with just kind of a glimpse of an idea of what I want to talk about. Um, I've discovered that doing a lot of research before these streams, while it's sometimes helpful, it's more often than not, it doesn't really help. Um, or at least that's what I've discovered. I, Listening to Corey talk, and I'm sure most of you know that I spent a week with Corey or 10 days with Corey down in Peru, and I've been following Corey for a long time, and I got a chance to kind of pick his brain while we were down in Peru. And Corey's kind of, for me, my personal experience of Corey was that he was open and honest to a certain degree, and when I pushed too hard, he just kind of closed up and I didn't get any more. And I understood that, and I got a lot better sense of what it's like to be a quote quote big star, our little pond of the fish community. I learned to appreciate the fact that Corey has so much on his plate that it's hard for him to be too outgoing. It's hard for him to be too forthcoming, because he's just got so much going on that he can't really he can't say, well, let's get together and go run around next weekend or something, because next weekend he's going to be in Kokomo, and the weekend after that he's going to be in Thailand, and the weekend after his hobby slash business has gotten to the point for him where it's all encompassing, and he's very popular, and so he has a whole, things like that take on a life of their own. They always say, be careful what you wish for because you might get it. And then once you've got it, it's like, okay, what am I going to do with this now? I've got all this fame and fortune that I wanted, but now that I'm here, I realize that it has a lot of downsides to it too. And I think that's where Corey is, and a lot of his experiences are. Yes, it's great. Hey, Pleco Whisperer, welcome to the stream. I'm basically set up to ramble about nothing for an hour here, so don't be surprised if I'm kind of scattered. Corey's got so many people that want something from him that it's difficult for him to be all things to everyone. And so he has to say, well, I'm going to cut this off here because there's no way I'm going to be able to, meet this demand or answer this, in such a way that is really meaningful to you because I just don't have the time, and it makes him come off as what's the right word that's not derogatory towards Corey, because no matter what you ever hear me say about Corey, I got to know him as a person, and I think that he is, in his own way, very real and very, as much as possible, tries to be genuine, and yet there's no way that he can be genuine to everyone. So he's hemmed in by how popular he is, by how much is going on in his life. I just sometimes I feel sorry for Corey because of that, and then sometimes I'm jealous as hell of Corey. So that's a real good balance, in the sense that Corey is doing what a lot of us as YouTubers want to, when we sit and think about our YouTube channel, we want to have 300,000, 400,000, a million subscribers. But then when you get that 300,000 or 400,000 subscribers, all of a sudden it takes on a life of its own. It's no longer this one-on-one, us talking to each other, someone asking a question and there being lots of time to answer and to try to get into depth about the subject and to, exhaust all possibilities. But when you've got that many people and the chat is just flying by, a lot of people start feeling like they're being left out because they can't possibly be anything but left out because there's so many people that want Corey to answer their question. It's look at me, look at me, look at me, and it doesn't happen because Corey's trying to answer somebody else's question that happened 3 minutes ago, and it just goes by, and I feel sorry for him in the sense that it's impossible to be that popular and yet make everyone feel like he's listening to them, because it's literally impossible. So, I feel lucky that I got to spend as much time as I did with Corey. That was one of the draws for me, was that I was going to get to spend time with Dean and I was going to get to spend time with Corey. and I was going to get to spend time with Joseph, and I was going to get to spend time with Michael Barber. All of those are people that I respect and wanted to get to know better. And I feel like that, you know, if you're going to go somewhere like Peru or Brazil or Thailand or Africa and collect fish, that the biggest part of the joy of doing that is getting time to get to know better the people that you're going with, you know, and sometimes you get lucky and you're going with fantastic people, and sometimes you may get unlucky and go with people that you'd really rather not be with, you know. But that was not the case for me in Peru. I, I, I felt very honored that I was getting to hang around with those guys. Uh, I'm nobody. I'm just another fish keeper, another hobbyist. I don't have a big business. I don't breed fantastic, unheard of fish. I'm not anything special, and yet I was able to feel like there was a certain amount of camaraderie. I mean, we were going through the same experiences. We all experienced things differently, but just to be in the company of those guys was as much a part of my experience in Peru as anything else was. And getting to know and meet, yeah, HC Aqua. I was modding in that stream. I have a wrench for Corey, so I was modding in that stream too and watching. I tried not to make any comments because uh, I just don't have the funding to be able to join and pay and do that sort of stuff. When something comes up that I feel like is, um, I don't even know what the word is to describe when Tom says, I think the member stuff is taking away the reason they started. Um, kind of. That's Corey getting wrapped up in the whole YouTube thing. He's really popular on YouTube, so YouTube is talking to him and in his ear, let's do this, let's try that. So yeah, it's money, and I'm on a fixed income, so anything that I do that has to do with money, I need to either save up for or sacrifice something else to do. So it's, the van breaks down and we have to spend money on the van. Well, that takes away from mad money that I could be spending on something else. And, if nothing else, I'm always going to tell you real life comes first. I play a lot of games, and video games are fun, and you can get wrapped up in the whole world that they present. But you've got to realize that real life comes first. And by the same token, it's great to be on YouTube. It's great to experience all these people and the wonderful things that they have to offer, and to appreciate all that. But what you really need to worry about is your finances, your hobby, your close circle of friends. Those are the kinds of things that come first. And then if you have the wherewithal and the desire to expand that and become a member on someone's channel, more power to you. I appreciate that there are people that have the wherewithal to do that. I'm just not one of those. Um, Going to Peru was a very expensive thing for me. I invested way more money in it than I thought I would. and and to do that took me saving for over a year of not spending money on other things so that I would have the money to spend. And no longer working because I'm on disability. I just really didn't have the expendable capital to just on a whim decide to do that. And partly that's my choice. Partly it's my choice to not be so concerned about money because I don't usually spend a lot of money. And so I try not to make money that important a thing in my, life, the close circle of family and life that I have carved out for myself. I try to I try to ignore money as much as I possibly can. I'm not sure that um, I'm not sure that people will really understand me saying ignore money because it's kind of it's not a natural state of mind for most people these days. Money is a something that you need to have enough of to keep, a roof over your head and food on the table and your family taken care of. So money's never been something that I strive for. I've always understood that having enough money to have a little bit to play with, to buy a new fish tank when I want a new fish tank, or to pick up a certain fish that I've been wanting and waiting and saving for. Those kinds of things, yes, money's important in that sense. And to have enough to pay my bills and to keep the power on and that my wife and I are comfortable to eat, those things are important. Money is important in that sense. But to have 30 times the amount of money that I require to exist and have a little bit to play with, it just doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't connect with me on any level. So I've never been driven to have 30 times more money than I need and then spend 20 times more so that that 30 times is now only 10 times more than I need. That whole paradigm has always just left me cold. I don't really have any interest in that direction. So, some people do. Some people are money based. Some people are driven to do it. My own father used to tell me stories about trying to go to sleep as a kid at night, living in a sharecropper's shack, and the cold freezing wind blowing in through the cracks in the wall, and him swearing to himself that he was never going to live like that once he was old enough to make his own money. And he, to this day, is still driven by that. And it's really important to him to have a whole lot of money. Bob says, I admire and respect what Corey has done with his business. The past year, I've come to terms with the fact that his business is first, not what is best for me or the hobby. Um, hey, Pam, welcome to the stream. I'm glad you could make it in. I've missed the last couple of your streams. I'm playing a new idle game. Yeah, Bob. I don't I don't disagree with anything you're saying there. I recognize it. I like Corey as a person. I I admire, like you do, the things that he's done. But he's in it for business. He's making money off of selling products, and I want that to happen because I want those products too. When I need a product, when my fish are sick and I need medication and I need it quickly, I want Aquarium Co-op to be there so I can call them up and order something and have it delivered within a couple of days. This is the conundrum that we are faced with as hobbyists. I always tell everyone to cultivate their local big box stores, cultivate their local fish stores, because you need them to be there when you have some emergency and you yeah, you're right. I'm not arguing your point at all. And that's why I'm trying to talk about my point of view, being disinterested as possible in the whole make money side of things. Nothing could interest me less than the idea of me making money off of talking to you guys on YouTube. That if I was counting on the money from making YouTube videos, I would despise YouTube as soon as it. Yeah, that's a good point. That your local fish store can match and sell for less because they're right there. And by shopping at your local fish store, when something comes up, when a power head goes out and you're going to lose a whole tank of fish because they're no longer getting the flow they need, you need to be able to get in the car and go and buy what you need to save your fish. And that's why your local brick and mortar stores are so important. It, I my best my best advice is to support all three: local fish store first, Corey second, or businesses like Corey second, and then your local big box stores. Right. Plus you can get fish from them. And you don't have to let them go through 3 days shipping to get to you, or 2 days shipping, or sometimes same day shipping to get to you. So you can go to your local store, buy the fish, they put them in bags for you. You spend 30 minutes driving home and they go in your tanks. You can, it's not near the same thing as shipping. But sometimes, and a lot of us, if we're lucky enough to have a local fish store that's really good, sometimes we don't recognize what a luxury that is. There are a lot of people that live in a town or an area where they can't get near a good local fish store. HC Aqua says another one of my local fish stores is closing at the end of October. I'm paying them a visit today to support them in their time of closing. I appreciate that, and I'm sure they will appreciate it too. I'm sure it's going to get swept aside in the the issues that they are going through closing, and you are going to miss that local fish store. And Tom says local clubs, and that's true too. That's uh, what I'm trying to say is what HC Aqua is talking about. That if we, as consumers don't support these places that offer us the things we need as hobbyists, then they're going to close their doors. And we're going to find that we're paying more and getting less at some national chain that has bumped the prices up, that only gets X, Y, and Z and not all the other letters of the alphabet, that only brings in bread and butter fish and has no oddball stock. You know, it's mom and pop fish stores are going out of business all over the country. And part of it is the internet, the fact that people can order what they need on the internet. But what people that are ordering on the internet don't realize is that they're basically putting their local fish stores out of business by doing all of their shopping online. You know, we can get cheaper stuff on Amazon, but sometimes it's important that we spend a little more maybe and support our local fish stores, our local, even our local big box stores. HC Aqua says they're building all these high-end condos in that area, so all the little mom and pops are being pushed out. Yeah, well, that's another way to lose a local fish store. Bob says he encourages people to ask live fish stores if they will price match. Mine does every single time and say they make enough. When I don't ask, they give me a 15% discount anyways every single time. Why would I leave? Yeah, it's you know, all of these things tie together. All of the idea that pretty soon, the way things are going, there is not going to be as much wild opportunity to collect fish. The fish are being fished out in a lot of places. The water levels are going down in a lot of places because there's climate change going on. And it's the same thing with our live local mom and pop live fish stores. Even the larger chains go out of business. Pam is working on fish, and I'm assuming that's painting fish. Tom's talking about some of the mom and pops give discounts to the fish club. It behooves the store to do that, because then they cultivate customers that might be shopping online otherwise. You know, I just it's incredibly wonderful to be able to buy stuff online, but it's also incredibly useful to be able to go talk to knowledgeable people that are local, that know your water conditions because they live in the same place you do, and their water conditions are very similar to what you've got, you know, unless you're on a well or something. All of this stuff is something that should be in our minds all of the time about how our choices affect our hobby, how the ways we go about doing things and the choices we make have an effect on the hobby in the world around us, in the sense of live fish stores closing, in the sense of wild populations being fished out, in the sense of um, we drive down the road and throw a water bottle out the window of the car, and that same mindset is polluting the whole world. It just doesn't seem like that big of a deal in our immediate lives, but it's having an effect worldwide. And there are a lot of places where the population has grown in the wild to a point where pollution, all those people are throwing their bottles and their cans and their bags and their boxes in the waterways because it's like a trash can for them. And fish can no longer inhabit those areas. So we really need to think globally. We need to think locally, but we need to think globally as well. And the way we choose to spend what money we spend, the way we choose to act in the world, all of those things have an impact. All of those things, you don't think it would, but every time you make a choice about how you're going to buy something, what kind of uh, activities you're going to do that cause pollution in the world, all of these things kind of swirl together and put pressure on our hobby one way or the other. We just need to be mindful. We need to think about things in a slightly different way as hobbyists so that we're promoting the hobby. We're promoting people in other countries being able to realize that there is a sustainable income if they don't overfish, if they protect their waterways, if they see to it that their villages and towns are not polluting their waterways, if they, ecotourism is one of the biggest money makers in the world right now. And it's because there's so few unspoiled places left. Everything's been trashed out, so you got to really go a long ways to get to a point where you're in the wild, and if we can, as a species, learn to invest our money in ways that makes sustaining the environment and incomes for poverty-stricken people more even with other incomes, so that people begin to realize that by doing things with the ecosystem in mind, and by us as more wealthy countries sharing some of our wealth, sharing some of our technology, so that they, as upcoming populations, can recognize that, hey, if we do this, if we just keep throwing our trash in the river, it's going to wipe out this potential income, and those jobs will be lost and have to turn to some other way. Whereas if we quit throwing stuff in our river and we clean up what we've already thrown in there, then that will create a sustainable income for a lot of our locals. And then what we need to do is try to get that income on a level where those people are able to better themselves, not get rich and be fat cats, but to enrich their lives more than just manual labor and, you know, dirt wages. And all of that can happen. It's not impossible to raise the standard of living of people in impoverished areas and have an eye towards ecology and have an eye towards non-polluting ways to do things. All of those things can happen. It's got to be worked on. We have to do it with the understanding of what our part is in seeing to it that these kinds of jobs become sustainable for people and countries. I mean, the one takeaway that I got from going to Peru was how poverty-stricken that place is, how little those people make in a year, how they're not desperate. Their poverty is not so much a thing of desperation as it is just all they know. You know, money is such a double-edged sword because my Buddhist teacher lived his whole youth in Tibet and became a young man and grew up in Tibet. And then one of his teachers told him, "We need you to go to the West. We need you, Geshe, to go help people in the West learn about spirituality and learn Buddhism." And so he got on a plane and flew to England. And he said when he landed, when he was flying in and saw all the buildings and all the opulence and all the wealth, he said, "It's like I'm coming to a Pure Land. It's like I'm landing in heaven because these people have so much. They have everything that they need and so much more on top of that." And then he got on the ground and he started meeting with people. And he said he was stunned by how unhappy those people were. That the fact that they had all of this material wealth and then were spiritually so miserable, so unhappy, so trapped in all of their wealth, shocked him. He could not believe how unhappy people could be having all of this stuff. And I think that that's a dichotomy that as human beings we need to recognize, that we need to really get down to brass tacks. And those people in Peru and those people in Tibet, they have almost nothing. They struggle to get by every day, and yet their personal happiness level is really good. They don't expect more because this is what they know, and they know that they can live, and they know that they can exist, and they know that they can raise their children. And yes, it would be critically wonderful if they could send some of their children to college and get those children highly educated, but it's not something that makes their lives miserable because basically they're pretty happy. Basically, all of the people that I met in Peru and the ones that I got to know, they were basically happy people. They weren't they weren't walking around saying, "I'm so miserable because I live in poverty." They didn't recognize that they were living in poverty because it was what they knew. And so they were happy. They were happy with it. Whereas here in the West and in the developed world, sometimes we are so driven by greed and money that we're miserable. People meet us and they say, "Oh my God, how can you be so unhappy? How can you be so hateful? How can you be so miserable and have so much?" Well, that's that's a dichotomy that exists in the world, and it's something that we need to recognize. It's something that we need to acknowledge. It's something that we need to deal with because it's pretty clear from the past 200 years, as an example, that what we're doing is not sustainable. We're going to the planet like an ATM and taking all this money out, but pretty soon the ATM is going to run out of money and there's not going to be any more to get out. And the answer to that is that we need to put money back in. We need to be giving to the planet instead of continuously taking out of it. And that's an issue that our children's children are going to be seriously faced with if we don't, as a species, wrap our heads around that idea and start moving in that direction. We don't have to, have zero pollution tomorrow. That's not where we're at. But we need to have less pollution tomorrow. We need to have more equality tomorrow. We need to have more awareness of our place in the ecosystem that is our home. It's all of this stuff is wrapped up in our hobby. All of this stuff is intricately connected to our hobby. And we need to think outside of just our myopic view of, "Ooh, I want that fish," and start recognizing what effect all of that has in the larger world. It's if we don't go to our local fish store and support them with a certain amount of regularity, they're going to close their doors. And we're not going to have that opportunity to go be there with them. If we don't support our local clubs, they're going to close their doors, and we're no longer going to have that avenue of information, help. All of this involves us spending money, but that's not really what it is. What it really is us being willing to be connected with these things with an idea towards sustaining them, with the willingness to say, Corey was saying this in his stream. He was saying that what clubs need is not someone to say, "Well, it'd be great if someone had sandwiches for us every time we come to a club meeting." What they need is for someone to say, "What would be a great idea if we had fresh sandwiches at every meeting, and I'll make them. This is my idea. This is something I'm willing to commit to the club, that every meeting I'm going to bring finger sandwiches with me, And that way we'll all be able to not worry about eating before we come to the meeting because there'll be something here to nosh on, and that's what it is in a nutshell. All of everything around us needs exactly that kind of thinking, understanding, and commitment from us. How much can I, as a person, buying things, change what's going on in the Amazon? That palm oil farming is wiping out the ecosystem that creates all the rain, that keeps the Amazon rainforest so wet that it can't burn? How much effect as one person can I have on all that greed and money pushing towards deforesting the Amazon, the lungs of the world? Well, I don't know. I don't know how much effect as one person I can have. Maybe I can stop buying products that depend on palm oil and say to the manufacturer, I understand that this is the easiest way for you to make this product, but I also recognize that by me buying this product with palm oil in it, I'm supporting the idea that you can go out and cut down all the trees in the Amazon to build cheap palm oil farms which offer nothing to the local wildlife and completely change the microclimate of the area where you've cut all these trees down. Because that's why the rainforest is a rainforest. All of those trees respirate water into the air, and in doing so, create a microclimate where it rains every day because all that moisture is being expired up into the atmosphere. It cools off and it rains back down again. And when you cut down all the forest, there's no respiration going on, and it quits raining, and suddenly it's no longer a rainforest, it's now a savanna. And savannas are easily burned. When it gets too dry in a savanna and lightning storms hit, it will ignite the dry tinder and burn the place. And that's what's going on. It's not wet enough anymore in the rainforest to stop forest fires from burning it down. So it's not like we can say, oh, gee, we need to send a bunch of planes down there to dip water out of the rivers and put all those fires out. That's not what's the problem. The problem is us buying products that require palm oil and greedy businessmen saying we need more palm oil farms and let's go cut down all the forests in Indonesia. Let's cut down the forests in China. Let's cut down the forests in Peru or Brazil so that we can grow more palm oil to meet this demand and make more money. And it's hard to know what it is that we need to do. Well, I'm sure some farmers do. But a lot of it is because there's no longer a microclimate that keeps it wet enough to where the fires don't burn out of control. Yes, farmers, local farmers, not palm oil farmers, but local farmers do cut down a certain amount of trees and then burn that off. And there is a ecology that requires fire before certain things will grow. But but that's not what's happening to the whole rainforest. What's happening to the whole rainforest is big business, very large farms that are coming in and clear cutting acres and acres and acres and chopping it all down so they can plant palm oil trees, having runoff from their fertilizers going into the local waterways without any control whatsoever. That's what's changing the rainforest. Um, Gold speculators going in and digging up large areas, clear cutting, and strip mining large areas. Those are the kinds of things that are really hurting the forest, not one farmer cutting down an acre so that he can grow yams. That's not what kills it. And now the forests are burning. Yep. This stuff is all connected. The more you begin to understand our lives and the planet and the lives of insects and animals and fish and birds, everything, we're all connected. People try to make it seem like we aren't connected. Pam says, maybe the government, yeah. Anytime governments are more worried about profit than they are the long-term longevity of their own people and their own countries, then somebody's losing out. Somebody is being short-shifted. And it's always the ecology of the planet that's being short-shifted. It's never, oh, poor business, they got put out of business, and the planet won one. It's never the planet winning one. You know, we have a huge track record amassed of what unsustainable greed and corporate excess will do to the planet. We have no track record of what all of us being involved in the ecology of the planet and trying to think less about greed and more about our children's children's children. We have no track record of what happens when that goes on. So it's time for us to develop a track record of ecology being more important than greed and business. And Bob says, and that brings us back to our original discussion. And Bob, this brings us towards the end of the hour. I can't believe that I've managed to rant for an hour about nothing. But somehow I've done it again. I know this topic is very tangentially connected to fish keeping. I'm sorry that it's me being political. You know, 60% of the people in our hobby are conservatives and Republicans because they have the money to afford to buy nice big tanks and keep all these fish and support clubs and support businesses. And I know that my politics does nothing but anger them, does nothing but turn them. You know, I'm just another liberal, tree-hugging, progressive, commie pinko fag to a lot of them, you know. And I wish that weren't the case. Yeah, HC, you go to any meeting and you stick your finger up in the air, lick your finger and stick it up in the air and feel which way the wind's blowing, you'll see it. Somehow, we as hobbyists need to educate the hobbyists around us so that they really begin to think about things like supporting their local fish stores, supporting sustainable breeding projects where the wild doesn't have to be depopulated, supporting transshippers and shippers learning how to keep their fish alive better so that they don't have to start out at the catch point with 20 times the fish they need, because 19 times those fish are going to die on the way to being shipped, you know. Tom says, reminds me of Mrs. Oddball's breeding program. Well, those are the kinds of things that, you know, when I went to the aquatic experience, what was it, 2016? One of my heroes in the hobby has always been Heiko Blair. I would recommend that any of you spend a great deal of time reading Heiko Blair's works. I mean, even if you have to go to a library and check the book out because they're expensive books and you can't afford them, go do it. Go check those books out and read them. Heiko Blair has spent his entire life in the wild collecting fish. I think Heiko's in his 60s now. Maybe he's in his 50s, but I think he's in his 60s. Hell, he may be 70, I don't know. He has seen the wild change. He has seen places where he collected fish 40 years ago completely disappear. There are no longer those fish there. And he has reached the point where he can no longer stay silent about what he's seeing in the wild, the evaporation of the wild out there. Every time he gives a talk, every time he's interviewed, that's what's foremost on his mind. That the wild as he knew it as a child no longer exists, that the wild that he knew as a young adult no longer exists, that the wild he knew as a middle-aged man no longer exists, and that we as a people, and especially we as hobbyists, we need to become activists. We can't sit around anymore on our hands and watch this world disappear. Because pretty soon, the only place you're going to get fish are from those that are raised in tanks. There's not going to be any new species introduced because there's not going to be any new species out there anymore. And I went to a pet industry talk at Aquatic Experience. They were giving a talk, and I thought, this is something I need to go and listen to so that I understand how these people feel. These are people that represent the businesses that are in the pet industry and the issues that they're dealing with and the issues that they're recognizing. You know, they're fighting things like legislation to keep pet stores from selling us fish. So, you know, all that stuff is going on. And we need to be aware of that too. And it's the pet industry that will help us be aware of that. You know, there's good and bad on both sides. Yes, it's probably a good thing that they can no longer sell us dogs because a lot of the dogs were coming from puppy mills, and puppy mills were really bad things. So there's good and bad on both sides of the scale, you know. But they were talking about how much money they needed donated to fund projects to do away with the destruction of wild fish that are being caught. And Heiko Blair stood up at the end of their talk and said, if you took that same amount of money that you were going to spend trying to support local collection in the wild and put that money towards some of these programs that are out there that are functioning now, like saltwater breeding programs that some of these people are running, if you spent that same amount of money in those programs where people have figured out how to breed saltwater fish and they can sustainably produce enough fish to support your pet industry, your money would be much better spent in that area instead of going out there and marching up and down the edges of streams. Hey, Alien World Aquatics, welcome to the stream. Instead of spending all your money in that end of the thing, try spending some of your money in the sustainable breeding programs. And I was just stunned. I was stunned that Heiko Blair would stand up in a meeting like that and basically throw everything they had said previously out the window and try to get them to recognize that there are other ways to actually attack this problem. All right, guys, you've listened to me rant for an hour. I hope that some of it's made some kind of sense. I hope that you begin to get the gist of the idea that I'm talking about, that it's not, we're not in some little bubble somewhere keeping fish. As much as we might like to think we're in some little isolated bubble, we're not. We're actually affecting the world around us by our choices. Well, I'm glad that you're out there teaching, Alien World. And you can always go back and watch the restream. All right, guys, I'm out. I've survived yet another hour on YouTube. I hope it's been useful in some way. I know I'm getting further and further afield on my topics here, but it's not further afield. It actually is part of our hobby to understand that. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Good luck with your fish. I'm out.